Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Home, Your Runway, the official Ruba podcast. My name is Simon Barnum and I am super excited. I mean, I say that every time, I'm super excited, but I genuinely am today. Today is a special one because it's the first time I'm getting to speak to a doctor. And this is really, really valuable stuff today. I can tell all of our listeners because, well, I went through something myself with regards to my own nutrition and had to reevaluate what I thought was a healthy lifestyle. And actually now I realized that, you can't live on Krispy Kremes all your life. So I'm welcoming today Dr. Ally Jaffee. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a bio about her. So Dr. Ally Jaffee, Doctor, can I call you Ally first of all?
Please.
Okay, nice and simple. Ally is a junior doctor, but you're also a Diana Award recipient, which for those of you that don't know, is a Diana Award is given to just a few people per year who go above and beyond to sustain positive change. So that's pretty impressive stuff. You're also the co-founder of the BBC award-winning social enterprise NutriTank, which we'll get into a bit later on. But their mission is to promote greater nutrition and lifestyle medicine education. That was quite lengthy. You have also worked closely with the likes of BBC Radio 4 presenter Sheila Dillon and Jamie Oliver, having featured on Jamie's Channel 4 TV show with NutriTank. And you are also the proud ambassador of the charity UK Doc to support, now I love this, to support doctors' mental health, which I think is something that we don't even think about. We just think that they are very robust and kind of immune to everything because that's their job to help us. But actually, we never actually think about what they must be going through as well. And you strongly believe in authenticity and openness within mental health. So what's good about today for our listeners is, yes, we are touching on mental health, but I think actually the fundamentals is mental health that's connected to nutrition, and to just be aware of what we put inside our bodies can have an impact on how we live our day-to-day lives. And so, Ally, we love hearing about you and your stories. So can you share any experiences that you feel have made you the person that you are, that we can possibly feel empowered by?
So how my journey started, I didn't get into medicine first time round, which I think really was good for my personal development, because I think failing at a young age is such an important experience to have, because otherwise, if everything goes well and your ducks are always in a row, you really don't have the tools at hand when something doesn't go your way. And that's why I think, and I can get into that a whole lot later, resilience training and the art of failing should be drilled into us from primary school age. But anyhow, I didn't get into medicine first time round, and it was always my passion to be a doctor from a really young age. My grandpa, my maternal grandpa on my mum's side, who was a brilliant doctor in South Africa, was very inspiring to me. And so I pursued, and I ended up taking a year out before I started medical school. And that was a year really for a lot of exploration, both within, a lot of introspection, but also just with the outside world. I was 19. I was a young woman traveling around by myself. I was in Australia, traveling the States, and I really had to be self-reliant. And I also just became completely fascinated by food on my travels. I was eating my way through everything, looking after myself. It required, I think, quite a lot of resilience and also planning and organisation. But when I arrived at medical school, I think I was quite prepared in the sense that I was primed to think about holistic healthcare and how important it is to do things to look after yourself, not always rely on medications and external things, and the power of food. But I also wasn't expecting just how much pressure it was going to be from the kind of social point of view. In terms of the fact that you're living by yourself, you're making a whole new network. And so I actually started suffering from panic attacks and generalized anxiety disorder in my first year of medical school. But I carried on, trying to empower myself with different tools, such as nutrition and walking in nature and things like that. And so it's a whole long story really, but I think for me, nutrition and mental health really overlaps. And I think there are a lot of practical tools that I can hopefully share today that will help others.
We'd love you to share. Absolutely. I want to backtrack a bit because there was something really that stood out for me at the very beginning of what you said, and that was like failing. And I think that's a topic that we need to delve into a lot more, especially with our younger generation, because I think, especially with today's social media, there is this element of perfection, and you have to be perfect and you have to be seen in your best light every single time. And if you don't get it right first time, you are deemed a failure. And it's like, actually, those failures are what shape us as people, which gives us our tools to be able to attack it again head on, to try again. So what could you say about failure in general, and how could that help people that are listening in?
Absolutely. So I just think that we need to accept that everyone can, as you just said, fall down. And when we do, we feel like it's all on us. We feel like, the magnifying glass is on us. Everyone's looking at me. I failed. My friends are thinking, oh gosh, we travel in packs as humans, and we always think people are judging us. But really, I think what I've learned a lot from being now going into my late 20s is everyone fails. It's just not necessarily at the same time. So one friend might be thriving, but another one might be having a tough time. And it's all about just being open and authentic, which are two of my really foundational values, and saying, oh, I can really relate to what you're going through right now. You don't have to minimize what you went through. You can say, yeah, I went through something as well. It wasn't ideal, but these are kind of the things that I learned. Let me know if you want to talk. Let me know if you want to talk further about this. And I think it's just all about listening as well. So being able to check in with people and also just talk about common shared human experiences. Failing is a huge one of them. And it is so normal. So we really should be normalizing it more and more.
I think the key thing from that is that it's okay to fail, first of all, isn't it? It's okay to fail, and it's okay to talk about that as well, because I think there's a stigma that surrounds it, that you feel like you're not worthy or you're not good enough should you fail. But actually, that's not the case at all. And as you've just said, then talking about it together, coming together, empowers you, doesn't it? It empowers you as a person to make you feel like, actually, it's okay to fail. If I can do it, you can do it. We all do it, but we need to press on.
Completely. And I think that's happening more and more now. People are becoming more encouraged to talk openly, whether it's about their mental health or about something that hasn't gone so well for them, like failing exams. At medical school, there's a really competitive, sometimes toxic environment where you just don't talk about your failures. And I am the complete opposite of that. I just think the more you suppress things, the more you don't ask for help, the more it eats you up. And at the end of the day, it's just a pride thing. And so if we can try and get rid of ego and just, say, listen, I'm finding this tricky, you can then ask someone who you probably really like to help you. And if they've thrived in that area, I'm sure they're more than willing to help you. So I think a lot of the time we are thinking, oh, there's a stigma about failing. But at the end of the day, there's so many lessons you can learn from it. And I think I could just give countless examples of where I failed and it's ended up being the best thing and led to much greater successes.
Yeah, me too. And I think if we don't, it helps us to grow, doesn't it? At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
if we don't fail, we don't grow. And if we don't talk about it, I guess it's going to bite you on the backside later on in the end, which is what none of us want. It's not a nice feeling to catch up when it's perhaps too late. So can you then talk about your career moves and how you became a doctorpreneur? Is that even a word? I love this. Doctorpreneur. It's kind of cool though, right? I feel like I want to be a doctorpreneur. It's not going to happen though for me. But where you're kind of merging the mental health, the nutrition, and all of those elements together. It makes you a doctorpreneur. How did that happen for you?
Sure. So very early on in medical school, I was primed to think about nutrition and holistic healthcare, because in the States they're way ahead of us, and that's where I've been traveling around the year before I started medical school. So I was really aware of all the brilliant evidence bases to support nutrition interventions to not only prevent chronic disease but also manage symptoms of chronic disease. So then when I was sat in my lecture theatres in the first couple of years of medical school, where you're only seeing patients a little bit here and there, it's mainly about getting the foundations of biomedical sciences. I was sat in my lecture theatres and we were learning about different things, from the management of diabetes to the management of polycystic ovarian syndrome, you name it, whether it was women's health, cancer, heart health. We were learning about all the interventions to essentially manage the symptoms of conditions within these specialties, but nothing around diet and lifestyle was mentioned. And I started to think to myself, this is awfully strange that we're jumping straight into the pharmaceuticals, then onto the surgeries when the pharmaceuticals don't manage it. Where is that sense of empowering the individual in front of you, finding out what can work for them and tailoring the care towards them? And so I set up a nutrition and medicine interest group in my second year. And I just really wanted to rally like-minded people together. I didn't know where it was going to go. I just wanted to see if there were other quirky people out there like me. And I came across this postgrad medical student. So he'd done a degree before, come to do postgrad medicine, and his name was Ian Broadley. And he came along to one of the meetings and he was like, Ali, like, I agree, there's a huge gap here. And I said, yeah, what's going on? Why is there such a huge gap in Western medicine? This is crazy. You know, lifestyle related disease is so soaring at the moment. Why are we not doing anything? Then we started digging into it deeper, and we found that it's actually in all of the guidelines. So the guidelines that medics and healthcare professionals abide by in this country are called the NICE guidelines. It stands for the National Institute of Care and Excellence. And essentially every condition you can think of in these guidelines, the first line management, the second line management, et cetera, is basically protocol. And obviously, as you get more experience as a doctor, you don't always have to rely on them, but they're always there. First line management of every chronic condition, it states offer patients diet and lifestyle. So it's in there, lip service is being paid to it, but no action. So we thought, oh gosh, it's down to us now. The action has got to happen. There's this huge disconnect. So that's when we thought, let's launch something. So we came up with the name NutriTank for it to be a think tank and network for nutrition and lifestyle medicine. And we launched it nearly 5 years ago now. And that was the start of the doctorpreneur journey, because we spotted a gap and we wanted to create a solutions-based strategy to essentially improving patient care.
This is fantastic. It really is. And do you know what? I'm sure my producers set this up for me every single time, because every time I talk to someone, it's something that I can relate to. So I've literally just had a situation myself where I've had to dig a little bit deeper and look into the nutrition that I was putting into my body, or should I say the lack of nutrition. And I won't go too deep into what was going on, but I was having a few digestive problems only a couple of weeks ago. And I was talking to people going, what's going on? This doesn't feel right. I'm getting all of these weird symptoms that I've never felt before. And someone said to me, are you eating correctly? And I thought to this day that I thought that I was kind of, eating my meats and my veggies and all of that kind of stuff. But I do have a sweet tooth. I will admit that. So it would at some point every day, at lunchtime, or I would have a chocolate bar, or I might have a donut or something like that. But it was becoming a daily occurrence. And for me, because it was a daily occurrence, it just became a part of my lifestyle. And because I've had to try and strip back what was going on, I've now reduced my salt intake. I've reduced my sugar intake. I'm eating a lot more green veg. I'm having those green smoothies, and I've noticed a difference. And I think it is because it's something that we take for granted. We take our bodies for granted. We don't think that anything, and I tell you what, it's because it's invisible. We don't see what goes on inside. And I think, even when it comes to people that smoke, I'm not a smoker, but I kind of get it. They don't see the damage that they're actually doing to their lungs. So then when it becomes too late, should there be, some sort of problem, obviously they're distraught about it, but it's like, but if you would have seen the damage you were doing all of those years ago, you probably would have stopped a lot earlier. And I think our easy go-to is pharmaceuticals and medicine. We take a pill for everything these days, and we don't actually look at what we're putting into our bodies, the nutritional stuff that does fight these diseases. And so I love the way that you're kind of bringing this to light now. I really do.
Oh, thank you so much for the support. It's what we really want, because we just want to really grow the community more and more and make it mainstream, because nutrition interventions shouldn't be an alternative. It should be the mainstay. But we're conventional medics. We're not saying no to pharmaceuticals,
Hmm.
but just have informed knowledge of when you need them. So you can really work in partnership with your clinician to say, okay, if you know, for instance, if we take diabetes, okay, we use something called HbA1c, which is a blood test that your GP will do with you every 3 months if they're trying to screen for it, and also monitor it. And why that's better than doing a one-off blood glucose, you know, pinprick, finger prick, is because you can see over the last 3 months how glycolated, we say, which means how sugary your blood cells have gone. And so it's a true indicator rather than a one-off. And so if you're sat with your GP and they've done your HbA1c and it's in a pre-diabetes range, okay, so diabetes, you know, is diagnosed when it's HbA1c 48, but say it's in a range just a little bit before that, and you want to go away, you should be able to speak to your clinician and say, okay, doc, so what can I go away and do for myself? And they should be able to signpost you to the right resources, maybe use social prescription, which is a new model coming into primary care, where they can set you up with a link worker in the community who can get to know you better and say, oh, okay, why don't you go on a park run? Oh, okay, you're interested in cooking and you've always wanted to see, you know, what you can get up to the kitchen. Why don't we prescribe you a cooking class? This is the kind of holistic healthcare that we need. And then if you go away and you do all of that, and some people who are of Afro-Caribbean or South Asian origin, unfortunately, do have higher rates of diabetes. If you go away and you still can't get your levels down, then go to the pharmaceuticals. It's an informed decision. You've gone through the process rather than it just being straight off the cuff. Here we go. Here's your metformin.
That's it, isn't it? It's almost like it's the easy option rather than looking to the root cause of it. And I think if we look to the root cause of what we can try to do first and foremost to make those changes, and then if that's not working, then look at, you know, as you said, then to go to the pharmaceuticals and go, right, we've tried this, we've tried that. So you've kind of ticked them off bit by bit, haven't you? And then gone, right.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned about holistic medicine and stuff like that. And would just throwing it out there, would CBD oil come under that as well? What's your thoughts on CBD oil?
I don't get involved in CBD oil. I don't think the evidence is out there yet. But I say to everyone, if it works for you, carry on. But as a doctor who, you know, practices evidence-informed or evidence-based medicine, the jury's just not out yet. There's not enough evidence yet to actually say that it's got loads of benefits. But obviously, commercially, it's very trendy right now. And we've seen that so much, whether it's a new fad in the food scene, like, oh, let's all go keto, let's all go gluten free. It becomes, you know, so insidious in all advertising, marketing. People think it's trendy, but you actually have to strip it back and say, well, what's the science behind it? How many randomized controlled trials are there out there to show you there actually are benefits before you waste your money? Because they are so intrusive in your face. You know, you'll see it all over bus signs, advertising. You know, that's the power of it. You need to think first, am I going to waste my money on this without knowing there's a true benefit? So CBD oil for me at this point in time comes under that. But it's not to say that I haven't heard wonderful anecdotes from my very athletic friends who rub it off on the topical stuff on them after an injury. And I just say, if there's no harm, carry on. But don't think of it as some sort of magic when the jury's not out yet.
Yeah, not necessarily a miracle cure as such as they are necessarily promoted. And I love the fact that you just mentioned that is lots of toxic information out there. which can be quite damaging and have the opposite effect of what people are trying to do to better their lives. So for people that are listening in, where can we find that information? Is it easily accessible? And I mean, you can find any information anywhere on the internet, but it's, as you say, it's finding the reputable information that you kind of go, right, this is what this says. I can put my trust in this.
Absolutely.
Where can we find that?
Sorry, this is honestly the most important question, because we're living in a world at the moment where healthcare is out of the hospital. Healthcare is on our phones, it's on Instagram, it's on Twitter. And unfortunately, we're living in a world where anyone can become an influencer and anyone can say anything because of freedom of speech. So we've got a lot of celebrities and influencers who all are preaching about some product of their own, whether it's a slimming tea or an apple cider vinegar gummy or an IV vitamin drip. It's actually just countless and very disturbing just how many fads there are at the moment. And the problem is they have such a large following, they have so much trust, and so people start to follow them. And there've been cases where it's gone to a really, really horrible extreme. I watched a documentary by a colleague of mine who's a brilliant geneticist and obesity researcher in Cambridge. His name's Dr. Giles Yeo. He did a BBC Panorama documentary a few years back called Clean Eating, The Dirty Truth. And he went around the world exploring different fads and the outcome of these fads on the individual. And there was a horrible case where there was this crazy American who was preaching the alkaline diet, essentially saying that people who are on chemotherapy shouldn't be on it anymore. They should come to his alkaline diet farm and they should have these alkaline drips, get rid of all their oncology support and advice, and that's how they're going to cure their cancer. And there was a legal case where he actually got an ex-British Army soldier, a young woman, to give him all her life savings. She mortgaged her house, you name it. It was like 25 grand plus. She went to the farm. She had cancer. She was vulnerable. He promised her a cure. And unfortunately, she ended up losing her life to this, and the family sued. And that's a very extreme example. But it just goes to show that when you hear about these new trendy things, just really try to have a critical head about it and think, why aren't they mentioning anything else other than their product? Why aren't they saying it's in conjunction? Why is it such extremist language, At NutriTank, we really try and be that reputable platform for really busy young professionals who want to learn about nutrition, lifestyle medicine quickly on their commute on the tube. You can scroll through our feed and you can read about nutrition interventions in any chronic condition. We cover it all, how to prevent things, and we use the science and we try and translate it into layman's terms as well. So it's not just for healthcare professionals, and we consider ourselves a very reputable platform. And I just want to say to listeners, just be mindful when you're reading about these things, when a celebrity is endorsing this. And also, just because they look that way and they're getting that outcome from their product doesn't necessarily mean it's true. There's a lot of photoshopping and a lot of plastic surgery that people don't admit to. So just be aware.
Yeah, very much so.
Spill over.
But very informative and to the point. I mean, the majority of our listeners, I would say, are going to be young adults or are young adults. And I think for me, we have to start from the base, don't we? We have to get this sort of education from a young age into our kids. Is that something that you're going to look to do with NutriTank, to maybe perhaps go into the schools and get them to be mindful of what they're eating at lunchtimes, for example?
Absolutely, Simon. So we launched a project and you can find it on Instagram. It launched 2 years ago, actually came out of the pandemic. Lots of creativity came out of the pandemic, and it's called Nutrition for Youngsters. So number 4. And you can just look them up online now. But essentially what we want to do is at NutriTank, our first aim is to improve the nutrition and lifestyle medicine within medical training. but we're not just about healthcare settings. In the future, we want to be able to consult all different institutions, whether it's corporate, schools, prisons, you name it, to better the nutrition and lifestyle medicine within their venues. So we started this schools one because a lot of medical students are really passionate about going into pediatrics and are very passionate about young people, and some are postgrads and have kids themselves. So Nutrition for Youngsters started pre-pandemic, but then relaunched in the pandemic. And it was an idea that came from a Bristol medical student who essentially got amazing resources and got a few of her friends trained in nutrition from dietitians, and they went into their local primary schools around Bristol teaching kids about childhood obesity, diabetes prevention, how to eat the rainbow, have more colors in their diet. And it was just really exciting. So we spoke to her, we said, can we essentially bring you on to expand this idea? And since then we've been trying to get as many of our medical student branches, so we have 2/3 of medical schools now with Nutritank branches, which are essentially hubs now for nutrition, lifestyle medicine education, to learn about this type of information, not only for future patients that they're going to interact with as future doctors, but how they can actually use this information to help themselves. And so now we're trying to get our medical schools to start getting in touch with local primary schools, get medical students trained up to go and chat to local primary schools about this. But it's all proving to be quite tricky at the moment and having to be virtual because of the pandemic. But we definitely want to put a lot of energy into this area.
Yeah, amazing. And I think it's, as you said, it's very important that we kind of get it into there, because if it starts from the ground up, it will have a knock-on effect, all around. One thing that I would say, and I'm going to kind of flip reverse this now, is that we live in a fast-paced society, unfortunately, and I've been victim to it many times myself, where we just don't have the time. A lot of people, especially in London, there's no time. So it's like you either eat on the go or you've got like a 10-minute window. And sometimes you can't always choose the best options. Do you know what I mean? And that's where I've had to look at myself. If I'd get like an hour's lunch break, which, an hour's enough time, but actually I'm also thinking about preparing whatever it is I need to do for my second half of the day. What can people do to try and make small choices from eating a, microwave lasagna to perhaps eating like a tuna salad? Is it as easy as that, or is it just bit by bit, 3 times per week, make better choices? What would you say?
I think it's honestly such a brilliant question, because it comes up time and time again. If you pardon the pun, time is the main barrier.
Yeah.
But if you actually prioritize yourself, and I've noticed this a lot because I've grown up in London my whole life, a lot of my friends, we're all in our 20s, we're very ambitious. And when I ask a friend how they are, my pet hate, Simon, is when someone says, "Oh, I'm so busy at the moment. Life is so busy. Work's so busy." I'm like, when are we ever not going to be busy? So it's just for me a very infuriating answer. And I think it's all about prioritizing. So of course I'm a busy person. I never like defining myself as I'm a doctor and an entrepreneur, and a loving daughter, girlfriend, etc. I try and pack it all in. But the thing is you prioritize what is meaningful for you based on what you are kind of seeing results from. So if you are not sleeping well, and if you are eating mainly processed-based food, you start to see the impact that has on your productivity. The relationships is all interlinked. Your sleep will become affected. Lack of sleep will then lead you to reaching out for the more sugary options, because that's what our body does. You want the refined carbohydrates when you are really tired. So it all becomes interlinked. And yes, we can say lack of time, we can't do it. But if you just prioritize it and make smart goals where you can actually factor it into your already robust routine that you've had for however many years, you really can notice a difference. Few examples I can give. So if you're commuting to work and you're taking the tube, get off the tube 2 stops earlier, walk the rest of the way, listen to something positive. Was surrounded by such negative news at the moment. When you're walking to work, instead of thinking about you know, what you've got meetings on for the rest of what meetings you've got on for the rest of the day. Just allow you to have that time, listen to a good podcast, listen to a TED talk, listen to some, you know, energizing music. You can choose what you consume, whether it's news, information, food, etc. And I do think we have more choice than we give ourselves credit for, even though we live in an obesogenic environment. And I completely understand that. I'm working in Luton at the moment, and it is really, really tricky, Simon. If I haven't had time to make lunch, I'm usually very good at meal prep, and I'll talk about some tips for meal prep. If I haven't had time for whatever reason, I went out for dinner the night before, catching up with friends. I didn't end up cooking, because usually I cook dinner to have for lunch as well the next day. Mm-hmm. And I want food. There's often an issue when you're living in a food desert, and that is something we really need to understand, that yes, we want to make the right decisions, but like you say, sometimes if there's only a petrol station or, you know, fast food chains, and, you know, you've only got X number of time, you can't make the right decision. So I think there are lots of barriers, but I do think you can make small changes. Meal prep is something I'll just briefly talk about. I make sure that every week I have my meals in order, because I know that I've seen the repercussions, whether it's my mood, my lethargic kind of, you know, you feel lethargic and fatigue that kicks in when you're not eating well. I get snappier, etc., etc. So I prioritize it. And I think when people start to actually make that connection, it doesn't become so much of cognitive dissonance, like, I know this is good for me, but I'm not going to do it. When you actually see the benefits, you'll start doing it more and more. And it's just little changes. So swapping out refined carbohydrates for unrefined carbohydrates. What I mean by that is swapping out white pasta for whole wheat pasta, white rice for brown rice. All these things will just make a small impact, and you don't have to restrict yourself. If you want bolognese, great. Why don't you just add some veggies into it as well? You can actually add things in rather than always have to take things out, and really just try and meal prep. So on a Sunday, I'll make lots of different grains, different legumes, different sauces, different range of vegetables, and throughout the week, so I'm not boring myself and having the same meal again. The stuff is cooked, the stuff is prepared. All I really do is whip up a sauce if I'm in the mood for something and have a craving, or add fresh vegetables to it. So it's just about making life a little bit easier for yourself.
It really is that whole cliche of you are what you eat, to be fair, isn't it? Like, we've heard that term so many times, but I think if you're not so mindful about what you're putting into your body, I don't even think that people necessarily realize there is a link between your mental health and what you put into your body. So when you were talking about that, like your relationship or how you can be more snappier, people would not necessarily think that. And I guess like that could be like the slump of the sugar, perhaps.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it is really true. I think the nuance I'll just say with you are what you eat is, it has some, you know, what am I trying to say here? With you are what you eat. Listen, it has benefit in some arguments, but it can also be a little bit of a toxic statement, just because one thing I do want to stress to listeners is that if you are living in an obesogenic environment and you are having your own struggles, and I had a period of emotional eating that saw me putting on like 10 plus kilos, and that just happened. That was just something that I wasn't really aware of and whatnot. So I want to just say with you are what you eat is that we don't realize sometimes why people are doing what they're doing, and there are so many nuances to it, whether it's the deprived environment they live in, you know, lower socioeconomic class, which can't be helped. All these social determinants of health, we call it, need to be in the conversation as well, so that you don't give useless information like go buy, you know, very bougie expensive food. You need to meet the person where they're at and also realize, why are they in that cycle? You know, Simon, you mentioned that you were having a donut every day. I'm sure you don't have to share. This is the future psychiatrist in me. I'm sure there was probably a reason why it started to become insidious and why you were feeling some sort of instant gratification from it. And I had that when I was like really down and anxious. eating really gave me that instant gratification, but it didn't solve what I was going through. So I think that you are what you eat. We just need to be a little bit mindful of it, because I know that a lot of people that I speak to in bigger bodies can get like a bit offended by that.
I mean, I'm going way off topic here. I've got a whole list of questions that my producer's like, right, can we get this across? Can we get that across? But I'm like, no, hang on, I've got to steer. You spoke about socio-economic environments, and everybody's at a different, level in their life, which we all respect fully. Would you, and I'm asking this question because I feel like I've noticed this myself, but maybe I'm shopping in the wrong places. Would you say, and be completely honest here, that to eat healthier is actually more expensive?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question. It's like constantly what we're up against, whether it's my senior clinicians who have said, well, eating healthy is more expensive. How do you expect me to tell my patients to do that? And my answer would be no, it's not, when you actually look at it without all the external noise. So when you look at the individual ingredients, rice, beans, it is all very cheap. You don't have to get the tinned beans. You can soak them yourself. For instance, get the big bulk chickpeas, soak them yourself. They're more expensive in the tins. The education just needs to be there of how you can make the more eat well, save less, eat well, save more decisions. So for instance, when I talk to students who are on a low budget, get frozen fruit and vegetables. That literally takes pounds and pounds off your weekly shop. And they're just as nutritious because they're picked and frozen at their time of ripeness. And that is cheaper. You can keep it in the freezer in bulk, whatever you always happen to go to. And so I think it's about the education, because if you can go, Iceland, you can go and get fresh fruit and vegetables and fish from Iceland. And, you can whip up lots of different things just with very simple ingredients. That's how the Italians did it for years and years, the most simple ingredients. But the problem is because there's the wellness scene at the other end of the argument, they've made things a lot more glossy, a lot more like bougie and expensive, and like saying that there's all these superfoods, all these supplements, all these powders, all these things you need to get into your diet. And it's a lot of nutribolics, as
oh, you
as
dropped it right there.
learned.
We're gonna have to beep that out, right? But that's fine.
But essentially, yeah, Simon, it's about the education. I do think that the government has a lot of change they need to make, because unfortunately, if you're not living near a supermarket that stocks the stuff or a grocer's nearby you, and you only have to rely on fast food chains, that is a big problem. That is a case of getting in my car, driving extra will be more expensive to get the fresh fruit and veg for my families. So nuanced answer.
Yeah, I mean, also you're looking at things that are like, when I try to buy healthier stuff, I normally go for the organic range, which seems to be more expensive. Now, I don't do that because I'm a snob, but I do it because I had an allergy many, many years ago, which I seem to have grown out of. And I remember people laughing at me. I had an allergy to broccoli. And every time I would eat it, people would be like, how do you have an allergy to something that is so healthy? And I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. But the steam of broccoli would literally give me an asthma attack. And sometimes I know it was quite bad. And I've realised over the years, and I could still be wrong because I've not actually delved into it too much. It's either I've got older and grown out of it. But I think it was the pesticides that were put on the broccoli. Yeah, because sometimes I would have a similar reaction to Brussels sprouts and spinach. So for that reason alone, I now try to steer clear of just standardized veg, and I try to go for organic. But that is more expensive.
Yes, that is more expensive.
Yeah.
And the thing is that's your own personal story.
Mm-hmm.
I would never say to a patient, eat organic, because that's just an unreasonable thing to say.
Yeah.
But it's about, washing fruit and vegetables. That's what I do every time. I don't always shop organic. And it's one of those things that I think more research is needed into it, because organic is meant to be the gold standard, but it's just not affordable.
No, absolutely. I have to say, Ali, I'm literally buzzing from this conversation because, as I said, with what I was going through a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure there's so many listeners out there listening in that just can go, oh my God, I can make better food choices. I can afford to make better food choices. I need to be more aware of what I'm putting into my body. So I'm loving you for this. But I do want to go back a little bit and talk about a situation, I guess, that's more close and more personal to yourself, because you have hit hard times in the past before, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were discussing at the beginning about failures, I was thinking about how that's actually my biggest success. Like, I'd say having essentially a really big depression 3 years ago
Wow.
has ended up being one of my biggest successes. But at the time, I viewed it as a failure. So it's
Yes.
really interesting, the power of reframing. So yeah, I'm happy to share a bit more about that.
Thank you.
So 3 years ago now, I took a year out of medicine to do another degree. So you can do that if you're extra geeky. You can take a year out and study something else for a year. So I came back home to London. I was studying at Bristol at the time. I came back home to London to do a year at Imperial. And I was doing a really exciting course in medical humanities and creative arts, which is something I'm very passionate about. You know, it all comes under that umbrella of holistic healthcare, how, you know, we can use the arts to get across information to patients, etc., etc. And during that time, I was finding my course very stimulating, very interesting. And then I just all of a sudden got a really horrible phone call. And it was very difficult because I didn't see it coming. And so essentially what happened was, it was in January, and I got a phone call late at night from, I love my family in Texas, from my auntie in Texas, and she had said that my grandma had died in a fire. And so I was with my mom at the time, and we just were both in complete despair and shock, and we just couldn't understand what was going on, because she was young, my grandma, she was like early 70s. And what had happened was, she was a lifelong smoker, and in America they're less regulated here. They don't give you at home oxygen here if you still are smoking, whereas in America, like, I think most things go. And essentially she was on her oxygen at the time with the nasal tubes and had lit a cigarette. So it was really, really awful. So it was, you know, that's how it happened. And essentially I was very close to her, so I said, Mom, I'm obviously flying, we're from a Jewish family, so you bury your loved one straight away. So I said, Mom, like, whatever, I'll leave my course, I'll send an email, I'll fly with you tomorrow, let's go and sort everything out. And anyways, from that, it was just very traumatic, very challenging time. But prior to that, I was already starting to struggle. So this wasn't the event that caused me to become depressed. It wasn't reactionary depression. I loved my grandma, but that wasn't it. This was just the kind of final catalyst. And then when I came back to study, I had exams coming up. And I just wanted to get them done. I didn't want to have to, you know, leave this course because I'd already committed to it and all of that. So I just pushed myself and pushed myself. But I didn't deal with any of it. It was just all like in a box, like going to Texas, like, you know, seeing her flat, etc., etc. And then when I came back onto the course, because it was a medical humanities course, the subject I came into was death and dying, because you obviously have to discuss that. And we were looking at all different arts, films, etc., all in that space. It gets very personal because people are giving their own anecdotes. And I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like, I haven't even processed it yet, and I'm asking to comment on things. And anyways, long story short, that just essentially led to me becoming very distressed, and I fell into a very deep, dark depression. But I didn't identify it for a really long time, because after I'd done those exams was the dissertation period of the course. We were just like alone for 3 months, writing up your project, very independent working. And so I just kind of was left to my own devices, and you don't have the social interaction of tutorials anymore because you're doing your dissertation. And I really started to spiral and spiral and spiral. And then it took me ages and ages before I went to see my GP. It then took me even longer to go on medication, because I thought it was a failure, all that self-stigma, a doctor on antidepressants, all of that. Long story short, looking back on the whole thing, wish I'd identified it sooner. I thought it was me just having some sort of academic crisis of not being able to do my dissertation, but it was much deeper than that. And wish I'd gone on medication sooner, because I tried going straight into talking therapy, and my mind, I wasn't sleeping, I was insomniac, I couldn't get a sentence out. So how can you expect that individual to help you if you're not physiologically able to even kind of interact? So I'm very glad in the end that I did go on medication. I then went to talking therapy, and then I then started to have a much richer existence, full of colour and less darkness. And so luckily all of that wasn't actually in a hugely long space of time. It felt like it was years and years, but it was really all in all 5 to 6 months. So I was able to get back to medical school that September and carry on my degree. But that was a big worry for me at the time. What does it mean if I don't finish my medical degree? I've always wanted to be a doctor. It's having all these identity crises, all of this. Can you be a doctor? Can you be depressed? Blah, 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 blah. All these self-limiting beliefs. And then do you know what? You speak to people and you realize just how many people have struggled, who are policemen, doctors, lawyers, paramedics, you name it, all in the profession of care and service to others. And they have their own struggles. And it's that we think of them as superhuman and I'm untouchable and all of that. So that's why I'm a really proud ambassador of the charity UOK Doc. It's a charity set up by a colleague of mine who lost his cousin, a consultant anaesthetist, to suicide. I lost my grandpa, who I spoke about at the beginning, to suicide. He was in his mid-40s as a doctor. I was 19 days old, and my parents had just moved from South Africa to have me in the UK. And unfortunately, my mum got the call. So it is a thing. It is something that really needs a lot more exposure, a lot more support. And I'm very grateful that I got all the help I needed, and I'm thriving now.
I am really touched by your story. I don't know if you saw me then, but I was just writing down so many notes because I was like, oh my God, I want to ask this, I want to ask that. First of all, thank you for sharing that, because that is deep. It's very deep and it's very personal. I can feel that when you talk about it. And one of the first things I wanted to talk about was your positivity about like with pro medication. And I think this is a really important thing to talk about, because I have come from a world, I guess, where there's so much stigma surrounding people that go on antidepressants. You're not going to come off them, or you're not going to be the same once you do come off of them. And you're talking about it from a different point of view. And I think this is really important, because I think maybe the same as many other people out there, but actually you're telling me something different. So it is okay to go on medication and you are living proof of it, to be fair.
And, I'm passionate about holistic healthcare. So it was an informed decision rather than it being the only option. And there's been so much about this literally in the last 2 weeks in a lot of medical journals and online, because Dr. Alex George, who is our young people's mental health ambassador, started a campaign saying post your pill. And he's on medication for anxiety, he's a doctor, and that led to so many different people posting their pill. And a lot of people thought it was really empowering and positive. But then the other end of the argument was, well, why are we getting people to do this? Are too many people on medication? And are people on medication when they don't need to be, and now, you know, they're being told that it's cool that they're on it. Like, are we kind of glamorizing it, was the other end of the argument. And I've had that before. I did like a cute little reel of me taking my antidepressant, and someone messaged me being like, oh, I'm not sure about this, I think you're glamorizing it. And I'm not glamorizing it. I don't think that campaign was about glamorizing it. It was about normalizing it and not having shame and not having that stigma. Because at the end of the day, if you have a deficiency, for instance, if you have scurvy, this is such an extreme example, and you need to take vitamin C, or if you're iron deficient, I couldn't really think that. If you're iron deficient, you need to take iron supplements. Why do we need to think of mental health as something completely different? That, you know, I know that it's quite a complicated argument, because the biochemical kind of serotonin argument is kind of getting more and more outdated, and people are less inclined to talk about a serotonin deficiency. So obviously we can't make the exact same similarities between deficiency this, take a pill for that. We truly don't know why a lot of the antidepressants do work, and we don't know why in some people they just don't. But if you are getting a good result from something and you have been an absolutely rock bottom, carry on. Why would you stop taking it? And I just think that for me, for instance, obviously, you know, in the long term, I potentially don't want to be on a lifelong pill. But at the end of the day, if I have to be, so be it. I'd rather be on a lifelong pill than have to deal with not getting out of bed and not thriving. So I think it's so individual, really complicated, two sides of the coin. Culturally, some people are completely against it, and you know, they don't think mental health is a real thing, and others just have too much pride. And some people don't get on well with antidepressants, and that's absolutely fine, and they've found other strategies to help themselves. But I think it's all about different pieces of the puzzle to help yourself. It's not just the pill by any means, and I think that's very short-sighted. And what we need to make sure that when GPs do prescribe it, you're prescribing it with more information and empowering education around, and you can join a local swimming club, and, you know, exercise is so important for your mental health, being in green spaces, cooking, eating well, etc. But it is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is it is all of those pieces that you've got to put together. As you said, what works for one doesn't necessarily work for others. It's finding what's, I guess, you're being your most authentic self and being true to you to kind of work out, you know, what works for you. What I picked up on there, which, and we're just going to talk about a couple more things before I let you dash off, is when you said about doctors being on medication for anxiety and stuff like that. And that's, I guess that's a mic drop moment for me, because I think that we live in this world where we think our doctors, our nurses, anyone that's in the healthcare profession specifically, that they are superhuman. Now they are because of what they do for us. But we don't actually think about them being human and what they necessarily have to go through. And I guess they suffer too, right?
Absolutely. If you just look at the pandemic, I've read countless stories and heard personal stories from my own colleagues who couldn't even be with their own children during the pandemic because they were serving the country, living in a Holiday Inn hotel room whilst their family were at home so they didn't infect them. You know, lots of different adversities. And that's, you know, the pandemic in a very acute thing right now. But even before that, doctors have always been under so much pressure to perform. It's a huge performance degree. You're constantly having to be on your best form, because if you're not on your best form, a big mistake happens. And that is the anxiety that you live with second to second, that if I'm not 100% ahead in the game, then, you know, you could essentially kill someone. So there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of performance stress, essentially. And at the end of the day, they are just people. We are just people. And we are compassionate. We have the scientific knowledge to be able to solve what's going on with bodies and minds, but at the end of the day, we are still people ourselves and need to see doctors, psychologists, etc.
Yeah, I love that. If there's any sort of message to go out on, it is definitely that we are all human. We all bleed the same. We all feel the same.
Mm.
So, be kind to one another, because whether you're a doctor, whether you're a manual worker, whatever it is, we are all exactly the same, and we all have our own journeys and experiences in life. All right, so let's talk about Christmas. We have Christmas. Actually, I'm really excited because we've got like 6 days. Is that right? 6 days till Christmas over here. Even though we put out our podcast at different times, but just so anyone that's listening, it's like the 20th of December.
Oh my
So,
god.
I know, right? The excitement is real. Excitement and nervousness. I'm meant to be getting on a plane tomorrow going to Gran Canaria. So hopefully, I think it'll be fine. I'm double jabbed anyway. But yes, it's interesting times at the moment. But from a nutrition and eating perspective, are you saying that people need to be wise in terms of what they eat? Everyone is going to indulge, and I think, to be fair, we deserve it a little bit, don't we? It's been another year of madness, and people are going to want that extra chocolate. Are you advising against that?
I never advise against restriction because I just think that that feeds into disordered eating. And I think it's tricky because Christmas is a very symbolic time, as are other, big central occasions that happen throughout the year, but Christmas is probably the ultimate one. And I think I never really like to talk about weight because I think there's so much more to health than just talking about weight, and there's so much stigma around weight because people don't realize you can be fit and fat, etc., etc. So I think with Christmas, it's about just eating intuitively. And I know that not everyone has kind of primed and trained themselves to do that, but for instance, if you're around friends and family, that's such an amazing thing, and to share food, amazing. But just when you feel full, you know if you feel like you want to stop, you can. But at the end of the day, it's a very joyous occasion. Like I'm not going to be some sort of slap the wrist kind of doctor saying, "Oh, we should restrict." But um, from an everyday perspective, because we like to look at overall dietary patterns rather than taking a week of your life or a day of your life. You want to try and eat intuitively, mindfully, finish eating when you're full rather than waiting to get to that I'm so stuffed level. But for a lot of people, that's what Christmas is. So no judgment, do what you want to do. And it's only, a short period in your life, and it should be enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, looking on the flip side of it, Christmas can also be quite a tough time for people, whether it's financial
Yeah.
difficulties, people isolating now as well. I've seen
Yeah.
lots of friends popping up on my socials that have unfortunately just, got COVID, and that's them for the next 10 days. So they won't
Yeah,
get to
I'm
set.
out one day before.
Oh,
I'm very
so
grateful.
very lucky. Just
Mm.
keep yourself in your house. And I think something like that, whether it be, isolating, even just being alone, elderly and alone, family rifts, children that have split families. What
Yeah.
advice would you give to anybody that could be fall into one of those categories, I guess, at Christmas time?
I mean, it's so tricky because of the pandemic as well. And so I don't actually know what is going on in the community to help people who are alone at Christmas. I would hope that, like we had at the start of the pandemic, when people would go and collect their groceries, and you'd get those little community cards for your neighbours, and you'd go and do those altruistic things. I hope that those initiatives come into place. It's a really tricky time to be alone, and I know people who are shielding, who can't be with family members, and it's very, very tricky. There's not a lot of advice I can give because we are in a really sticky situation, and it will be different for everyone because everyone will have their own barriers and issues. But I guess it's just about picking up the phone, and if you know someone who's elderly or alone, who is alone over Christmas, just pick up the phone to them, sending gifts. You can send them some cookies and things that they can eat and enjoy themselves, and just thoughtfulness and trying to help them be present on a very tricky day, with some presents maybe. But it's a tricky one, Simon, because everything's so unpredictable. So I don't know if there are initiatives that will launch, because we don't know how long we're going to be in it, and I don't know what's out there at the moment. But my heart goes out for everyone who has had a lot of disruption to their Christmas this year.
Yeah, I think all of us have, to be fair, so our hearts go out to all of you. Ali, it's been amazing talking to you. Thank you so much. I just want to highlight your Instagrams, so that if people wanted to get more information from you and to you, what are your Instagram tags?
Sure. So my personal one is at Dr. Ally Jaffee. Nutritank one is at Nutritank_official, and then our project for kids is at nutrition #4 youngsters, and then we're also all on Twitter and LinkedIn, and our website is nutritank.com.
Amazing. I mean, I'll be honest, before I interviewed you, I was being a little bit nosy, as I have to do my research, and I came across an amazing quote that you have on your Instagram, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to read it out.
Sure.
So it says, "Let me fall if I must fall. The one I become will catch me." I love that. Could you interpret what that means to you and what that would mean to anybody else perhaps listening in?
Absolutely. And it's such a nice way to finish off, because it just comes full circle back to what we were discussing at the beginning about failure. And I think what I'm trying to get across to people following by using that quote is that when you fall, you are often in a lot of despair, distress, and wondering where next, who am I, because I've fallen. You become almost, you catastrophize. And what we don't realize is just how resilient we are innately, that it's not something you're just born with. And some people have it and some people don't. We're all innately resilient and can build upon it as we get older through more and more growth and personal development. So what I find so amazing about that quote is that when you do fall, you can be that person that picks yourself up, because you are the only person that will guide you to the next step. You can call on who you want for support, which is so important. Support networks are so important, but to actually get you back on track with that direction, with that passion, with that ability to flourish, is yourself. And I think that is a really empowering thing. And that's something I definitely experienced when I was really depressed, that I tried, to call upon as many people as I could, because I have a very good support network. But at the end of the day, it was all me that had to get myself there. And I think if we can teach that to kids, that they are so powerful and can help themselves more than they'll ever be able to know it. So I think it's an amazing quote to finish on.
You literally took the words out of my own mouth then, because as you were saying it, I actually felt empowered myself. And that's what we want at the end of the day. You want to be able to kind of have that moment to go, I can do this, I will do this, and I will push forwards. Ali, it's been fantastic talking to you. It's been very insightful, very informative. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, I'm just going to throw a quick quiz at you. Very, very easy. I'm going to give you some words, and you're going to talk about the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay. Sure. And am I doing this as well? I'm doing this as well. They've wrote me in again. Okay. So, right. Okay. Number 1, love.
Family.
I would have said family as well. It's the first thing you go to, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Me.
Strong.
Self-care. That's where I would have gone. Nice. But I like that. Strong. That's a good word. I think it's what we all need to work on a little bit more, isn't it? Just being strong within ourselves, to believe in ourselves, I guess. Mm-hmm. Okay. Favorite movie. Oh, why did they write this one?
No, I'm like the biggest movie junkie.
Okay, well, yours is going to be easy then.
Oh my God.
Mine's just embarrassing.
But the thing is I can never give one. Maybe you should go first.
Okay.
I need to
I mean, literally throw me under that bus.
I just have so many.
All right. Well, mine, I have to say, is Titanic, which I'm not sure if people... I know. It goes back to the whole Celine Dion thing and, you know, Jack and Rose on the raft at the end. And I'm like, there was definitely room on that raft for him to get on.
Oh my God, without
right?
shadow of a
I don't know if
doubt.
you've seen the memes. All of these memes are coming out now with the dogs on the raft.
Yeah, I've seen all the memes, but I watched it so young and I clocked that at a really young age. I remember saying to my mum, like, crying my eyes out, why?
Don't let him go. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, favorite films. Oh God. Okay, probably Blue Jasmine, Woody Allen.
Oh wow. Okay, interesting choice. I've never even heard of it. Okay, recommended.
Yeah, it's a bit artsy.
Okay.
That is the case with Woody Allen's films, but it's got mental health themes in it, and it's very beautiful, quite dark at times, but just quite enchanting.
So you can resonate with that as well.
Yeah.
Nice.
I like really dramatic,
deep. Story. Personal. Your own personal story. Yeah.
Well, every individual's personal story.
Yeah, that's it. Everyone has a story to tell. And I think, you know, everyone's story is important. And I think that's where we get a little 100%. Bit lost sometimes, that people think that their story isn't as important. But actually, everyone has a different take on life. You know, you could be the richest person in the world. It doesn't necessarily make you happy. So you have a story within that as well, you know. Family.
Warmth.
Lovely, nice. I don't know why I went a bit off. I went Christmas time, but I guess that's what would happen.
Very fitting.
Well, there you go. Yes, it is indeed. Happy.
Free.
Oi, nice. Okay. I don't have one. I'm going to nick yours, I think. Yeah.
We can share.
We can share. Like a box of chocolates. There you go. Animal.
My dog, Buddy.
Hey, I'm a doggy person as well. Yeah, I cannot wait.
He's supreme.
Yeah, they just, it's the unconditional love that you get from a dog, isn't it?
He doesn't love me. It's really sad. I smother him. He just doesn't love me, and everyone takes the piss out of it.
So he's a dog, but he's got the personality of a cat. Because normally it's the dogs that want to love you.
He loves my mum.
Oh, right, okay.
But I live out
favoritism.
Homeless, so maybe he's angry with me. But he just doesn't love me, and it's really sad.
Oh, he feels like he's like the top dog now, doesn't it? It's like
he thinks he's the best.
Yeah,
he thinks everyone should bow down to him.
I'm loving the confrontation that you're having with your dog.
Genuinely,
like, yeah,
it's like a known thing with my family. He just doesn't like me. I love him so much.
Yeah. That's it. I'll be like that. No treats for you anymore. Rude. Out. Okay. Mindset.
Growth mindset.
Growth mindset. Yes. Focus, like laser focus. I think for me, no, actually, I don't want that. That's too contrived. I feel like consistency to kind of work on yourself a little bit, because we all falter, don't we, at times? So, all right, a couple more. Present. Now, I don't know whether that means present as in gift or as in to live in the present. And I would have gone that way, to live in the present, to enjoy the now.
Yeah, that's all we have.
The now. It's important, isn't it? As you said, sometimes you're, oh my God, there was this quote the other day. I read it yesterday. I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20.
Yes. I've seen that one before, and I couldn't agree more with it.
Oh, it really touched me.
Perspective and context. So
absolutely.
Important.
Yeah. So live in the now. Oh, okay. So that wasn't the answer the producers were looking for. She's like, no, if you had, if you had a present. Okay, so if you had a present, what would it be?
For me, what do I want?
Yeah, what do you want for Christmas?
I really want a kitten.
Okay, nice. Just to bring around to annoy the dog.
No, because I live in my flat with my boyfriend, and we have no animal, and I love animals. and I want a kitten.
Yeah, I've kind of put those hints out there to my partner as well, but we're not getting a dog, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're not at that. I'm not responsible enough yet for my own dog.
And I've
But a
only been with
kitten
my
I can
partner for
handle.
4 months and I want a dog already. so he's like, no, I'm not having any of this. So we're going to get together a year first and then we're going to have a dog maybe. So yeah, I'm just going to have to, I don't know, deal with a mug or something like that, a coffee mug. And okay, last one,
I
Chris.
hope you get something better than that, Simon.
Well, do you know what? I'll message you and let you know what I get.
Gotta go.
Yeah. For if I'm not getting a dog puppy in a box by 4 months, we're over. That's what it is, isn't it?
I'm gonna put these demands early on so they know what
Right?
they're getting
Standards. They're not demands. I've got standards.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, he actually listens to these podcasts. He's over in Gran Canaria. And he's like a super fan. I love him for that. So he'll know that this is about him. He'll probably get a message later on when this is released, being like, "Bubby, really? Really?" So I'm just going to say it one more time. I want a doggy.
And I want a kitten.
Yeah. All right. Last one. Christmas.
Oh my god, it's so tricky. I think music. I think I love the music.
Yeah.
Around Christmas.
I'm going to say food, but with a new
I'm
mindset.
not mad about Christmas food.
Are you not?
To be honest with you. Because I come from a South African Jewish family. We do it in a very different way.
Right, okay.
So I'm meant to be in South Africa right now, by the way. So very destructive Christmas. I go every year.
Yeah.
And we don't have like all the British traditions. So it's like a lot of seafood and just different.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I like Christmas food. I like the music.
You prefer the music. It makes you feel joyous and warm
like I don't
inside.
love turkey and like potatoes and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. One of my favourite dinner, if I had to have a dinner, would be a roast dinner. So, which is just, Christmas dinner is just an extended version of that. Where you can have more meats and an odd pigs in blankets or something like that. So yeah, it's a time for me to indulge, but not too much.
I don't like mince pies. I don't like
mince pies. No, I don't know. No, I'm not. No, we're cancelling mince pies this year for us. Yeah. All right, Ally, do you know what? It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on your home, your runway.
Thank you so much for having me. And Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you indeed. And to all of our listeners, have a Merry Christmas. We wish you a very happy and successful 2022. And we will see you again for our next Ruba podcast, Your Home, Your Runway, very soon.